Hey everyone, so I am finally trying to find the time to do this labor and delivery story. I'm nursing Riley right now, and she's kind of falling asleep, thank goodness, because she's been occupying my time and really fussy in the past few days, so I haven't really been able to do this, but the swing is on in the background because I had her in there and I didn't turn it off all the way, so it's still on a little bit, but I am going to try to remember as much of this story as possible. I did forget a lot of things just because it's been like 2.5 months already and everything has been crazy. I do have some of it on my phone, so if I look at my phone a little bit, that's why. So I was due on October 31st on Halloween 2012, and if my makeup is like smudged anywhere, then just letting you know, I've had a really rough day, really stressed out, and today has just been like probably one of the most stressful days of my life, and I'm just trying to be more positive about it and just forget about everything bad that happened today. So anyway, like I said, I was due on October 31st on Halloween. And so a few days have gone by after that date, and my doctor asked me if I wanted to be induced with Cytotec. Well, that doesn't induce you, it just ripens your cervix so that you can be induced, because you can't be induced if your cervix isn't ripened enough. I said no, I want her to come naturally, you know, I want to have a natural birth. That was my whole plan, and he said okay, that's fine. And then a few days later he called me again and was like, okay, so I'm just letting you know that I'm going to be out of town next week, so if you want to wait for her to come naturally, you might have to have another doctor deliver her. And I was like, I really don't like that idea. You know, I haven't even met the other doctor. I really didn't want to, you know, have another doctor that I barely knew deliver my baby. I told everybody that I was going to be induced and that he was going to use Cytotec, and there's a lot of controversy about Cytotec. I mean, in the past it has killed mothers and even their babies, and it has ruptured uteruses from too strong of contractions or whatever. But I did talk to my doctor about my concerns with that, and he told me that that was back when they used to use a very high dosage of Cytotec, and they only use the smallest dose possible now, which is 25 micrograms. And I think, if I can remember right, he said that's like a quarter of the pill or something. So 6 days after my due date, I went, because I decided, you know, I'm going to be induced. I trust my doctor. He said that I would be monitored the whole entire time with Cytotec. It's not like he's going to give me Cytotec and let me go home, because that would be bad, you know. Also, not to mention, Cytotec, I guess on the label it says it's an abortion pill, but I guess they have found out that if you insert it vaginally, that it works as a vaginal ripening agent. So it was safe if you insert it vaginally. So we get to the hospital at 2 p.m. on November 6th, and I didn't sleep very much the night before that because I was really nervous about being induced. I was nervous and anxious and excited, and like, if you've ever had a baby, you know exactly what I'm talking about. All those mixed emotions, and you know, you're excited to meet your baby, but you're nervous for childbirth, especially if it's your first time having a baby. I didn't sleep very much that day, so I was pretty tired. So my doctor got to the hospital at 3 p.m. and he checked me for dilation, and I was 1.5 centimeters dilated and 50% effaced. So it was pretty disappointing because a week before when I had a checkup, I was only 1 centimeter dilated, so I had only progressed 0.5 centimeter, and it was just a little disappointing. So he said my cervix wasn't ripened enough, so he couldn't start me on Pitocin or break my water, so he had to insert Cytotec, and I said, okay, that's fine. And so he inserted it vaginally, and so after that...
Hi, love.
Hi. Look at Riley. Can you take her?
Mm-hmm. Oh.
So after he gave me the Cytotec, I wasn't allowed to get up or anything, just in case, like, if it fell out or something. I had to lay in the hospital bed the whole entire time. He told me that he would be back in 4 hours at 7 p.m. to check for dilation and all of that good stuff. And so I had to lay in the bed for a really long time. And my nurse put an IV in my arm just in case of an emergency or anything. At 6 p.m. I was 2 centimeters and 80% effaced. So I'd progressed a little bit more, but not too much. So at 6:18, my contractions were about 4 minutes apart, and they weren't really unbearable or anything. They weren't that painful, and I was waiting for my doctor still to get there. So he came back at 7 and he checked my cervix, and I was still 2 centimeters dilated and 80% effaced. So I kind of felt like I was progressing really, really slow, but at least I was 80% effaced, so my cervix was more ripened and I could be induced. So he broke my water at 7 p.m. and he said he would be back at 9 in 2 hours to check again. And that breaking my water definitely sped things along. It was the weirdest feeling I've ever felt. It was a huge gush of water, obviously, and like it was really intimidating because the tool they use to break your water is like this long needle looking thing, and they stick it up there and they break it, and it's just like the weirdest feeling in the world. And so after he broke my water, my contractions definitely got more intense. They weren't that bad, but they were definitely more intense, and they were coming on pretty fast. So at 9, my doctor came back and I had progressed to 3 centimeters, and I was having pretty painful contractions at this point. They were getting really, really close together. I feel like I didn't have very much time in between each contraction. I was breathing through them pretty well. The lady who was having her baby in the room down the hall, I could hear her screaming and screaming, and just it was making it kind of hard for me to concentrate on my own contractions. And my mom and my sister were there too, and they were, you know, kind of giggling about things. I don't even know what they were looking at, but they were looking at something funny. I could tell they were trying to be quiet for my sake, but at the same time I could still hear them, and it was very distracting, and I was like, I cannot concentrate. Can you guys please be quiet or something? Because I really need to concentrate and breathe through these contractions. So I was bouncing on my yoga ball, and it helped so much, but every time I would bounce on the yoga ball, the belts to monitor Riley's heartbeat kept falling down, and the nurse would have to come in and keep fixing them over and over again, because if you've had, you know, a hospital birth before, you know that they strap your stomach up to hear the baby's heartbeat just to make sure that everything's okay. So that kept happening, so it was kind of impossible for me to bounce on my yoga ball, which was really helping because I was just bouncing on it, you know, with contractions. I was moving my hips and rolling my hips, and it was helping so much. But eventually I had to just go back into the bed because the belts kept falling down. So at that point I was like, I cannot even do this anymore. I was like grabbing so hard onto the handlebar of the bed. I was just like squeezing it, and Danny said it looked like the handle on the bed was about to break because I was squeezing it so hard. Eventually, my last check was at 10 p.m. with no additional progress. So I was still at 3 centimeters, I think. But my contractions were about a minute apart. So I was in a lot of pain, and it sucked hearing that I was only at 3 centimeters. They started the lowest dose of Pitocin at 10:30 p.m. and at that point, like, it wasn't like that big of a change from my contractions already, but eventually they started to get worse, and I was very exhausted. Like I said, I didn't sleep the night before being induced because I had all these feelings. I was anxious and nervous, and then I was tired. I just wanted to sleep, and there was no way that I could sleep because of these contractions. So I said, I really want the epidural, and Danny was like, are you sure you want to do this? He was trying to talk me out of it, which is what I asked him to do if I asked for the epidural, but I was like, no, I need the epidural. I can't even bounce on my ball. You know, I couldn't concentrate. I couldn't sleep. I was so tired, and I was getting contraction after contraction. So the nurse came in, and I told her I wanted the epidural, and she said, okay. The anesthesiologist, I have a hard time saying that word, but she said that she was in surgery and I would have to wait a little bit longer. And I was like, okay, how long do you think? And she said, it shouldn't be too much longer. That's all she said. She didn't give me a time, which was like crazy because I wanted to know. By the way, I did get my hair cut. If you can see, it keeps like coming out at about midnight. You know, every time the nurse came in, I would just be like, I need the epidural right now. Like, an hour went by and I still didn't have it, and then it was about midnight that I got the epidural because the anesthesiologist came back and she was there and she made everybody, all my family, leave the room, and she did the epidural. So it was funny too because I asked the nurse, I was sitting up and I couldn't grab onto the side of the bed and I was getting a contraction. I was like, can I squeeze your hand? And she said, she let me. So I was sitting there with a contraction, squeezing her hand, and I was sitting up waiting for her to put the epidural in my spine. When she was putting in the epidural, I was like, ow, this is really, really, really uncomfortable and it hurts. Is it supposed to feel like that? And she said, yes, it's supposed to feel a little bit weird. And then I did not like it at all. Like, I could feel it. Ugh. But anyway, so she asked, what side can you feel the epidural on? And I said, the left side of my spine. And she said, that concerns me because you're supposed to feel it on your right side right now. And I was like, oh my God, what are you doing to me? And then, like, are you even doing this right? Like, when she said that, I did not even know what to think. So she told me that I have a slight case of scoliosis, which I didn't know. She finally got the epidural in and it felt really, really strange. And then my legs slowly went numb. The pain started to die down. And then eventually I didn't have any pain. I could feel when I was having a contraction though, because my belly would get hard and I could feel my muscles tighten up. But, so yeah, I hated the feeling of my legs being numb, and not being able to move them, but I was glad that I could sleep and not be in any pain. And I do watch, Judy and Benji on It's Judy's Life. I remember watching her delivery video of her in the hospital having Juliana, and I remember her saying something like, I don't remember what she said, but she was so relaxed and she's like, this is so nice and I'm so warm. And she was just, after she got the epidural, because she was planning on having a natural birth too, but she ended up getting an epidural also. And I was like, oh my gosh, I know what Judy was talking about now. Like, I was so happy to not be in any pain. And I did get to sleep a little bit. We all tried to sleep. When she put the epidural in, they put 2 catheters in me. They put a catheter in my down there so I could pee, because obviously you're numb and you can't feel anything. So there was like a pee catheter in me, and then there was another kind of catheter in me. I don't remember what it was. At 3 in the morning I was fully effaced and 6 centimeters. So at this point I was thinking, okay, with the way I'm progressing, I think I will be fully dilated at 8 in the morning at the earliest, maybe 9 or 10 or something like that. So the nurse told me she'd be back in a few hours. She said she would come back at 6 in the morning, 3 hours after checking me, to see if I had progressed anymore. So eventually she came back in. She came in at 5:45 to like look at the computer and check my contractions. So it was 5:45 in the morning, and my mom just asked her if she can check for dilation. So because I kind of felt some pressure. I think I was feeling pressure down there. So at 5:45 in the morning she checked, and my mom was like, please be, she had her fingers crossed, she's like, please be 8 centimeters dilated at least. And the nurse was like, you are complete, you're 10 centimeters dilated. So I was so excited. I was like 5:45 in the morning and I'm already completely dilated, and I was like so excited. My sister and Danny were sleeping, so we woke them up and they were so passed out. They were out of it. Anyway, so the nurse called my doctor after finding out that I was completely dilated, and I don't remember what time he got there, but eventually he got there. It seemed like forever for him to get there, but she said that they were just going to wait for the baby to drop down a little bit more anyway. So he finally got there and then got everything ready. The nurses, there were like 4 nurses in there. So after everything was ready, they held my legs up, and I've never been to a Lamaze class before, so I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how to push. I didn't know how to breathe and push. So the nurses were really nice, and they helped me. They told me what to do. They told me when to breathe, when to push, how to breathe. The first push, they were able to see Riley's head and Danny was like, oh, I see her head, like, I see her head, she's coming. And then my doctor would be, tell me to push for 10 seconds, and he'd count, and I would like sit there and push, try to push for 10 seconds, and then I'd stop before they'd get to 10, and I'd be like, I just can't breathe. And then, so after 35 minutes of pushing, and it did not feel like 35 minutes of pushing, it felt way shorter than that, actually, but after 35 minutes of pushing, Riley was out, and it was really hard to push because you're really numb down there. You can't even really, you can't feel yourself pushing. So she was out eventually, and I mean, I could feel the pressure of her, but she came out, and after that, I just started crying. Like, I was so happy, and they cleared her nose and her mouth out with the little bulb syringe, and then they placed her on my chest, and she was looking up at me, and she was just like kind of looking around, which is weird because I didn't really know that babies can have their eyes open that soon, but I thought usually they just, because usually when you see babies come out with their eyes closed and they're just crying, but she wasn't crying at all at first, and she's just looking at me, and I was like, oh my god, I was just sitting there crying. And I still remember how it was. I still remember her looking at me, and then they took her. My mom was crying a little bit. My mom said my sister was crying a little bit too, and Danny said he cried a little bit. So I wasn't really paying attention to anybody though, because I was just in my own little world. And Danny did cut the cord, but I didn't see that happening either because I was just looking at Riley. And then they took her and weighed her and cleaned her up and everything. And while that was happening, my doctor was massaging my belly to get the placenta out, and it came out. I didn't even feel it come out. I didn't even really feel him pushing on my belly, and then he had to stitch me up because I did tear. And then the nurse was like, wow, your placenta looks very, very healthy. And then she showed it to me, and I was like, that looks disgusting. And she's like, it's not disgusting, it's beautiful. And I was like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have said that. But that was the first time I've ever seen a placenta in real life, so I was just, I don't know. It was weird. It looked weird. But Riley was 8 pounds and 11 ounces, and she was 21 inches long. She was perfectly healthy. She was born on November 7th, 2012 at 7:17 a.m. And I was pushing for 35 minutes, like I said, and my labor was 11 hours and 50 minutes, which is average. The average is 12 hours, but I'm just glad I didn't go through labor for, 24 plus hours like some people do. And it was a pretty short labor. I feel like it was really fast. We were at the hospital for a day after that. We stayed the night there, and after that we went home. I was really, really sore. Had stitches, like I said, and those took forever to dissolve. Oh, and I forgot to mention the other reason why I chose to be induced is because, like I said, I was planning on having a natural birth, and Riley was already an 8+ pound baby at that point based off of her measurements. So I did not want to push out a baby that big. That was already a very large size for me. So that was another reason. But yeah, so Danny and I are so happy to have Riley. We're very thankful for her. So I do have a makeup tutorial filmed, but I just need to edit it. Thank you guys for being patient, and I will definitely try to have more videos out soon. Bye.